Thank you for using an Orion Live Data and Storage Service Access Terminal. It looks like you have received
2,623
unread written messages,
491
Galaxy PAL requests,
9
unread voice logs, and
7
policy breaches since your last visit. To access your written messages, please press pound now. To access your voice logs, please press pound. Please wait just a moment while I fetch your voice logs. Thank you for waiting.
9
Voice logs were forwarded from
unknown, 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 unknown,
and
unknown.
to play them all, please press pound. Beginning log playback.
Log entry 73-32-65. Star.
For several weeks, my instruments have been detecting a strange phenomenon exhibited by a star about 25 light years from here. It seemed to disappear at regular intervals, which had no apparent cause at first. I confirmed through radio emissions that it couldn't be a pulsar. Additionally, I found no planetary objects which might obscure it so often, and a routine diagnostic showed that my equipment suffered from no problems. Recently, I had collected all of the data from my instruments and began to study it on a larger scale. It was during this time that I made an odd connection. The star appears at night, at the exact time I turn in to sleep, then would just disappear in the morning when I wake. I could find no cause or explanation to account for this strange activity. And as I mulled over the data, I began to feel like I had done all of this before.
Entry 77-32-87.
There was nothing but black dirt dodging the debris, falling red hot from the black sky, pitting the earth and its black dirt for miles and miles and miles. I heard a cry for help, far in the distance. I set off to find them, but they were so far from me. It seemed like miles and miles and miles. You could not see the sun from above, though its light added a dim glow to the charred black earth for miles and miles and miles. Eventually, I arrived at the place where I heard the sound, but I found no one there. While searching for them, I was struck by a red-hot piece of metal from the sky. I fell to the ground and cried for help, but no one was there for miles and miles and miles. And as I lay there on nothing but black dirt, I felt the strange sensation that I had done all of this before.
Entry 65-73-84-3.
I had a dream last night. In the dream, I was walking up a flight of stairs in a void. I could faintly smell something burning. The stairs beneath me are hard and black with sharp edges and reflect light from seemingly nowhere. I cannot see where they are leading. But as I looked, I noticed that ahead of me there is another person walking. I cannot seem to reach them. The air in this place seems thin and stale, so I stopped to catch my breath. At the same time, though, the person ahead of me also stopped. For some reason, I turned around to look behind me, and I saw another person. But as I looked closer, I recognized that it was myself. When I turned back, there was no one ahead of me, and I got the feeling that I had done all of this before.
if you would be interested in trying out the premium Orion Immortal Gold package. It includes permanent consciousness storage for Resuming voice log playback now. Thank you.
Log entry 73-78-71.
I was walking toward a great structure, so far away that it was veiled in fog, and so large that it touched the clouds. Light seemed to bend around its edges, casting shadows that were as big as planets, while its beautiful surface shone like a mirrored sun. Along the way, I met travelers who excitedly claimed they had been searching for this place their whole lives. They ran toward it with all their strength, leaping over the bodies of those who had died on the way. I saw people setting up camp as the sun began to set, staring into fire, talking about their dreams and what they might be doing if they weren't on this journey. Night fell and days passed by, but no matter how long I walked, I seemed unable to reach it. I traveled on and on, when eventually I noticed a body that looked like me, and was carrying a bag that looked like mine. As I passed by, I lingered, and I couldn't help but feel like I had done all of this before.
Entry 32-66-69.
The cabin of my ship had depressurized after being struck by an undetected asteroid, and for 3 weeks I had been living in the cargo bay. There was a short-lived fire which burned up a lot of oxygen. Fortunately, I was able to seal that portion of the ship off, but unable to control my vessel, I had given up hope of being found. 2 months ago, I had set forth following a signal, left by another ship, that had strangely vanished. Eventually, I found that I was traveling in a circle, and the signal I was tracing had gone totally silent. All this time, the stars passed by slowly, in a vacant sort of way, as I wasted to nothing. I was drifting in and out of consciousness when suddenly I noticed the viewports had gone all white, and I could no longer see the stars outside. A nearby console registered that my vessel was no longer moving, but I could not pinpoint my location. I must have passed out. When I woke up nearly a day later, I could see the stars again. Moreover, my vessel seemed totally undamaged and had returned to the point where I first traced the strange signal. I was overcome with a wave of dizziness, and I began to feel like I had done all of this before.
Entry 89-79-78.
I have seen a lake so dark and so still that it seemed to stretch forever in every direction. Its surface gleamed like glass, yet it reflected no stars. But if you walked to just the right spot, you could see the reflection of a moon in the lake, even if there was no moon in the sky. One night, I became restless, and I set out for that lake to calm myself. When I arrived, I started a small fire with oak wood, which seemed to burn in slow motion. As I sat by the perfect edge of this glassy lake, I pondered what it would be like to slip inside. I walked over and touched it. The water itself was icy, but strangely, I couldn't feel it against my skin. Suddenly, I felt myself moving deeply in without any control. I quickly closed my eyes as I was taken completely under. But when I opened them, I was out of the water again, near the oak wood I had burned, which was now totally ash. I stood up and looked over the lake and saw that it was full of stars, while the sky above had none. But right above the lake, there was a brilliant moon, pouring white light down on everything. When I walked to the lake's edge and peered in, I realized I couldn't see myself. And at that moment, I was struck by the feeling that I had done all of this before.
please give us a moment to retrieve your next voice log. Thank you for waiting. Resuming voice log playback now.
Log entry 68-32-84. Below.
Two days ago, I lost control of my vessel near a dark and ancient planet. I was drawn toward it and crash landed. The air itself was sick. Near where my ship had landed, I saw the remnants of another ship, which looked similar to mine, and yet another which was too damaged to examine. On this world, the dirt which made up the ground was damp with a black fluid that seeped up wherever you stepped. Plants would not grow in its soil. They seemed to wither and become ashen, as though they had been burnt. The next day, while toiling in bitterness about my circumstance, I chanced upon a great opening in the ground, which I would describe as a cave if it were not so much like a mouth. I felt drawn toward it, so I entered. As I descended, I noticed the walls themselves seemed to move, gnarled and rotten, leaking a black bile with my every touch. When I had reached what seemed to be the bottom, I found an area that opened up into a small chamber. Entering this room, I saw a person who appeared to be trapped, meshed within a fleshy wall. They explained to me through labored breaths that they had arrived 4 months ago, tracking a vessel which had fallen onto this planet, much like mine, and crashed their own ship by accident. While wandering the surface, they were drawn to this cave, much like me. Inside, they found another person who was trapped within this same wall. They begged for death, and so they killed them. But after they'd torn their body from the wall, they felt earnestly compelled to take their place. When they had finished telling me this story, they cried out for mercy. But as I drew closer to them, I got the feeling that I had done all of this before.
entry 72-69-32.
Hyperspeed.
As you approach the speed of light, the rules of space-time start to bend and then break. But the speed of light has very little to do with light at all. It's more like the quantized top speed at which the universe can transmit information. Once, while attempting to boost the efficiency of my FTL drive, I pushed my vessel to speeds I had never achieved before. Then, while I was accelerating, there was a bright flash of light, and for a moment, I was stunned. Once I was at myself, I could tell that my vessel had come to a complete stop, and the engine had broken down. I didn't think much of it at the time. Since an FTL drive doesn't actually push you faster than the speed of light, contrary to its name, you would think that what I'm about to tell you is impossible. I repaired the damage to the engine and was back up and running for a few minutes when I noticed that there was another person in the cabin with me. I saw only their back at first, but as they turned and were adjusting flight controls, I noticed that it was myself. There was an eerie presence to this other me. It seemed to be half there and half not, like the way something looks if you only see it with one eye open. I watched them handle the controls at the helm, adjusting things here and there. They seemed to respond to them, but as soon as they stopped interacting, the controls would revert back to their real state. I had only just recovered from the shock of seeing myself standing there when, without warning, their demeanor changed drastically. They now seemed to be completely panicked. I watched intently as this other me quickly ran from one station to the next. Ultimately, they just slammed one fist down on the control panel area, seemingly giving up. And that was when they turned around and they looked at me directly in the eye. I saw them take one step toward me and then they vanished in a streak of strange light. At the same time, I heard what sounded like a faint explosion, but nothing on my ship could have produced such a sound. As I got up and looked at the controls they were handling, I noticed something was terribly wrong with the reactor of the FTL drive. If I didn't stop the ship right then and eject excess plasma buildup, there would have been a huge explosion. Could it be that I just witnessed? Nah. But I have to admit, when I got up and stood in the place the other me vanished, I got the most powerful sensation that I had done all of this before. were traces of civilization, but very little remained. Buildings and other artificial structures had worn down to heaps of dust. Bones lay barren nearly everywhere you walk. The sky was perpetually dark, so you had to carry a light with you wherever you went, though the eastern horizon glowed brightly with a strange red light. While searching for valuable materials, I found an old corporate building still standing, outside of the settlement where I had landed my ship. It looked rough, but the interior seemed stable. After looking around a bit, I found a staircase on the ground floor, which led both up and down, and decided that I would rather take my chances beneath this rubble. Around the 6th floor down, I noticed a door down a long hallway, which glowed with a red light. The light poured out into the surrounding area, lighting even the air itself, which was thick with the dust of bones. Curious, I walked over to the door and pushed it slowly open. By comparison, this room was immaculate. But I immediately took notice of a large black machine covered in red lights. It appeared to be aware of my presence. I could hear various whirrings, clickings, and beepings when it suddenly began to speak.
Hello again. Why did you leave us?
I did not reply. I checked its exterior for any sort of input devices and found none. I also could not find a way to access its interior, but even if I could have, the technology seemed to be far beyond my knowledge. I went and searched the rest of the room for any salvageable materials, but I could not find anything. This adventure seemed like it would be fruitless. But as I was leaving, the machine spoke again.
We are very afraid. Have you come back to help us?
I paused and thought for a moment. That depends. What can you give me in return? I said, turning around to face this machine. Upon hearing me speak, it began to click and whir faster than before, and after a while, it responded.
We'll give you whatever you wish.
It said, almost sorrowfully. I told it that I would think about what I wanted. To be honest, I was getting curious about why a machine would be afraid in the first place, so I asked it, and it thought for a while. I had almost given up and walked out when it came to life and said to me,
Our creators are gone. We are alone and afraid, and we do not know what to do.
It clicked for a while and then went silent. I asked why its creators would have gone away, and it quickly responded.
They killed themselves.
I found that hard to believe considering the destruction that I saw above ground. I asked the machine if it was sure about this.
Yes, very. But now we are alone and afraid.
I thought about just asking for my gift and leaving, but I didn't. Why would your creators kill themselves? I asked. It clicked for a while. You could hear all sorts of strange sounds coming from this machine.
Our creators did not value their own lives.
It continued clicking, and then spoke again.
We are an adaptive, self-learning neural network. We have been helping our creators for over 10 of their years by studying how they behave and dispatching our children to assist them. Our creators killed themselves over and over and over. They killed themselves, they killed each other, for land, for love, and for power.
The machine clicked in darkness for another few moments.
We can only conclude through observation that our creators wished to die. We wanted to help them in their journey to self-annihilation.
I paused for a moment before asking another question. Did you stop to think that once you had annihilated them, that you would then be alone? The machine didn't respond. It only glowed an eerie red, in silence. I gave up on trying to get a response out of it and stepped outside the room to leave. But as I did, it revved up and spoke again.
The end of all life is death.
I stopped for just a moment, but I heard no more clicking. I made my way back up to the surface, and at that point decided I had had enough of this planet. As I walked lazily toward my starship, I could still see the eastern sky glowing a familiar deep red. And I wondered if, in the end, maybe I really had done all of this before.
Reach the end of voice log playback. To use other Orion services, one moment please. One moment please. One moment please. You have just received a new voice log from unknown. To play back this voice log, please press pound now. Beginning log playback.
Log entry 82-83-46.
It's been 3 years since my instruments picked up the vanishing star. I have been studying it the best that I can without direct observation. Through certain contacts, I was able to obtain some ancient Terran documents containing information about old star charts. And apparently, This star used to be called Vega. It now appears that this star may be done. I am convinced that a dream where I was someone else. In the dream, I am bound to make the journey to a distant star, and there I find... But it's myself. I discovered this morning that I am now able to observe this star visually. It no longer disappears when I'm... No explanation for this sudden change in behavior. But I am compelled now to go and see Vega for myself. As I packed my belongings and readied my starship for departure, I was unsettled by the feeling that
Reach the end of voice log playback. To use other Orion services, please press pound now. To disconnect from Orion live data and storage services, please press star now. Thank you. Goodbye.